Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of the Liberty First Foundation Roundtable. Tonight is the last broadcast or live stream of 2022. So, tonight we're going to kind of go back over a little bit of what's happened through 2022 and some what happened this week and so forth. Essentially, this is our year in review. Tonight, I have with me Frank Johnson. I'm sure the other cohorts will be joining us later. Welcome, Dahl. Welcome, Peter. It's good to have you guys here. And thanks, everybody, for all the support that you've shown us through the years or through the year. We're kind of new on this live streaming, so we do enjoy it. We've been getting some good feedback from it, and I do appreciate Michael Voss and Frank joining us every week and having these discussion what's going on in the United States and across the world, in the world of politics and so forth. Hey, Jeremy, hope to see you soon.
Pete, Dal, Jeremy, good to see you guys. Mr. Vasquez, before we begin, I have one very serious question aimed at Mr. Voss.
Oh, and
go ahead, Frank.
All right. I don't know if it's possible, but please move heaven and earth to get me a shirt exactly like the one you're wearing. That shirt is crazy sweet.
Oh, I've got one in black and red, and the problem is, I don't know where I got it.
Oh,
I got
killing me.
I got all three at the same time because I like paisley, and so I have one in black and silver, one in red and black, and I have this one, and I can't find it again.
Oh, you're killing me.
I wanted to get a blue one, and I can't find it.
Oh man, because I am a sucker for a paisley shirt. I haven't had one in such a long time. I got plenty of paisley ties, but man, that shirt. If you have the ability to see this on your device, that shirt is killer. That is killer.
Oh yeah, it's one of the ones I like, and but if I do find it, because I am looking for one in blue, I will definitely let you know.
Yes, please tell me where you source those, because I have been criticized fairly often as of late because my entire clothing repertoire is solid colors that just do nothing but exemplify how fat I've become. Either that or I have logo shirts of gun companies and stuff like that, and I don't wear them on the broadcast because I don't want everyone to ever think that I'm trying to promote or do anything like that with sponsorships or anything. Although it would be nice if we did get a sponsor. Until then,
yeah, it would be.
You gotta earn it to have your logo appear on this broadcast. You gotta earn it.
All right.
Well, unfortunately, I won't be on camera tonight. I've got some type of eye infection going on. So,
yeah, what kind of infection?
Eye infection.
Oh, that sounds pleasant.
Yes,
yeah, my left eye is all swelled up.
Oh, that's not good.
Yeah, he's right now he kind of looks like the guy from the Goonies.
Oh boy,
no, it looks like somebody just slugged me in the eye.
Yeah, poor guy. Yeah, and unfortunately, there's nothing wrong with me. I just happen to look like this, so you just have to settle for what you got. Boy, I'll tell you,
2022 is coming to a close.
Yes, it is
quite the year.
For sure. A failure. It's been an amazing year of failure.
Yeah, that it has. I mean, we've had runaway inflation with excessive government spending, not just here, but across the world. And a lot of people don't understand that the United States has a huge impact on the global economy and global inflation. And when our government spends out of control like it has, including the amount of money that it's sent to other countries, um, it's going to cause global inflation. Okay, because if essentially inflation, everybody knows the definition of inflation is when there's too much money chasing after too few goods.
And speaking
And
of
our
goods being
government,
chased after, there's a link to the
our
blue
government
Paisley shirt in the comment section.
continues to spend out of control, borrow money that it doesn't have, and just gets us to the point where we are literally just fueling this inflationary cycle. Not just here, like I said, it's happening globally. And here, Biden just signed into law. In fact, he's bragging on it on Twitter, a $1.7 trillion omnibus spending bill. I mean, really, are we that naive to try to blame all corporations for inflation when we've got a government that's out of control with the spending?
Okay, so first of all, if someone thinks that it's inflation is due to corporations, they're stupid and they don't understand economics. Two, when we say there's wasteful spending, besides having a shrimp on a treadmill, we're spending. Do you know that we increased by 10 times the spending in Pakistan for gender studies? We're giving them $200 million. In 2020, just 2 years ago, we gave them $10 million. We're now giving them $200 million for gender studies in Pakistan.
Why are we giving any country money for gender studies?
If they can't tell the difference now, no amount of money's going to help them.
Well, this is the thing. There's so many levels of stupid that this exemplifies. First of all, if you didn't get it done with 10 million, why are you spending 200 million? Because if you didn't get it right with 10 million, 200 million isn't going to help you. That's just waste. That is just buying off somebody. Second thing, they have an entirely different culture. They are rejecting the progressive politics. They have seen how successful it has been to be able to become a trans toaster in America, not trans person. I'm not picking on them. You can pick your own sexuality at any given moment, at any given day, and everyone has to respect it always and forever, which is stupid. It's lunacy that is driving people apart, that is destroying a culture. They have rejected that. They have their own culture and their own way of doing things. Whether we like it or not has nothing to do with it, because they're not America, they're Pakistan. So that's another reason. So we're wasting money. We're trying to change someone's culture that doesn't want to change their culture. How about the third thing? That $200 million could feed exactly how many homeless, how many poor kids, how many veterans and other people who are homeless could be given a home or to be given food at the time of a global crisis on food shortage. And we're spending 200 million, and they're looking at me when you question this, they look at you and go, "You don't like people? Screw you. I like people. Oh, you don't support women's rights. Screw you. I love women's rights. I think leading by example in America, showing that women live better lives and are more productive in America than anywhere else in the world is the best example. They will want to emulate it because it's good, not because they got money, which means nothing to them. This is how bad it is. And this is just one example. And quite honestly, $200 million is a drop in the bucket. It's not really worth even noticing, which is why they did it. It's crazy.
Well,
Had to rank it. Had to
this
rank
here
it.
came out 2 days ago, and the United States is going to be spending $55 billion in Africa over the next 3 years.
That's a joke. That's a joke. That is literally a joke. That is comedy. That is political comedy on the screen right now. Do you know who? You know what that means? China spent the last 15 years developing relationships in all of Africa. Africa is Chinese. In the sense of its world economies, they have agreements with almost every one of the 23 African nations. And they've been developing that for 15 years. And under Obama, Trump, and now Biden didn't care. Now they're trying to step in because they realize everything in that all this whole green movement is Africa. You can't build a windmill, a solar panel, or an electric car without Africa. So now they're trying to, after the fact, go over and make the relationships that China has already established, that China already controls. China has spent hundreds of billions over multiple years. This is a joke.
Mm-hmm. And
This
it's
is my realm, guys. I mean, this is the stuff I follow all the time. I know no one else pays attention to this stuff. I've been reading about this for years. I watched Obama. I remember screaming about this in 2015, and everyone was like, "Mike, what are you talking about? It's Africa. Who cares?" Okay, go on.
Some of the things that are in this bill.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here with a list from Breitbart, and I'm looking at some of the things on here, and I'm like, I don't even want to even begin reading some of the things that are on here, because let's face it, we can talk to a blue in the face. It's not going to make a difference. Politicians are going to spend whatever they feel like spending, and the American people just aren't going to give a damn. Because, again, we are looking at something that's so ridiculously large that you can't possibly contemplate the numbers. You can't possibly contemplate it. It's to the point where the numbers, you have nothing to relate it to. You know, you can't.
No.
You can only count how many steps that you can walk before the distance that you've traveled becomes something you can't even fathom walking that far. The amount of money on the pale for things, the loan forgiveness plan thing that we know is unconstitutional. President can't forgive loans. It's a dead in the water issue. They spent what the hell is this according to this? Like $3 million, $2.3 million for an outreach program for advertising to attract people to apply for a program that doesn't exist.
right.
Okay, they earmarked this money. They said we're going to spend and we're going to advertise and try to get people to apply for a program that doesn't exist. Now, how do you justify this? How do you justify it? How do you justify a $3.5 million earmark for the Michelle Obama walking trail in Georgia?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How do you do that? $410 million. Now, this is hysterical. $410 million is to remain available to reimburse the countries of Jordan, Lebanon,
Mm-hmm.
Egypt, Tunisia, and Oman for their enhanced border security measures.
Yes.
We are spending $410 million to reimburse countries that are not our own so they can enhance borders around their own country, while we have a president that is systematically tearing down any and all barricades that protect our own border, while simultaneously saying Oh, as far as Title 42, we're abiding by a court order to that we have to put an end to this. The court order was something they set in motion. They set it in motion to put an end to Title 42. And then when everybody started getting really upset about it, they said, oh, well, we're just following a court order. Yeah, but you're the one who brought the suit. You're the one who initiated the thing that brought about the court order. The court order is finishing the work that you wanted to do. Thank God Supreme Court at least decided to step in for a minute there and say, hey, wait a minute. This might not be, the best thing. This might not be legal or legitimate. Thank God they did that. But like you say, it's just gotten to the point everything is so big, so out of control. And I said to someone the other day, I said, the reason why the government can get away to lying to people is because the people don't really want to hear the truth.
Well, that I agree with. This bill was 4,155 pages long. Introduced onto the floor at 1:00 in the morning. They got, I think, 2 days with it before they voted on it. Actually, I think it was only a day. They voted on it in a day, and then it went to Biden for his signature.
On a private plane to his summer home in the Virgin Islands so he could sign it.
I want to know how the hell, in good faith, can any one of our representatives, I don't care what side of the aisle you're on, how in good faith can you vote for a bill that you have absolutely no clue what is in it? What is in it?
Because they don't care. It was Representative Clyburn, as I recall, back in 2010, in talking about Obamacare, saying, why are we going to read something that would take you 3 or 4 days, a team of lawyers, to be able to read through and to try and understand? It's too long. It's too big. You just need to pass it because it's a good idea and it will be good for the country. That was his words in 2010. And it's the same idea. It's so big. It's meant to be so big and so convoluted, because if you track this thing, what you'll see is, this section refers to an entirely different section that refers to 2 different laws that already pre-exist. So you've got to follow that entire chain to figure out, well, what does this actually do? And it's written all in legal English, which is nothing like spoken or written English, because everything has different meanings. So you need lawyers to interpret what has been written to be able to interpret the laws that exist that it is referencing in the sections it is referencing. So you need teams of paralegals and lawyers to understand each and every bloody paragraph. And you're supposed to go through 4,000 pages of this? No, you're supposed to just say, wow, that's really big. What's the price tag? 1.7 billion. Okay, yeah, whatever. Okay, we'll go with it. 1.7 trillion.
Well, just for the sake of accuracy, it was John Conyers.
John Conyers, sorry.
And the exact quote is, hello, those members. This is my John Conyers impersonation. They say, read the bill. Read the bill. What good is reading the bill if 1,000 pages and you don't have 2 days and 2 lawyers to tell you what's in the bill?
Yeah.
And that's
what we pay these people to do.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Okay. That is why they were elected to office, is to go through these bills. And if they are writing these bills so big that they cannot even read through them, or writing them so big that they can't even debate them effectively, then we've got a huge, huge problem.
Well, that's part of the problem.
And we've been saying that all year.
Well, that's part of it, is that they're not the ones writing the bill. If they wrote the bill, they would know what was in the bill. But they're not writing the bill. Special interest groups are writing the bill and then putting it on their desk and saying, this is what we want to include in the omnibus package. P.S. On the last page of what we gave you, you can find your check for your campaign.
And
This is all bribery. It's all bribery. There is nobody writing these bills because it benefits them particularly. Otherwise, there would be a little tag next to every one of these insertions on this bill that said the name of the representative or the senator or the congressperson that inserted it into the bill. So we would know who was responsible for that particular line of spending. Because I can find all of these ridiculous things line by line by line, each single earmark. We can find each single earmark, but we can't find who's responsible for inserting it into the bill. It may benefit a certain person like Lisa Murkowski, who's getting a couple of $1 million up there in Alaska for indigenous domestic violence prevention programs and all the rest of that. Now, granted, nobody's ever going to want to deny anybody the funding for domestic violence or anything else like that. But if it's in your state, it's a state thing. It shouldn't be coming out of the federal coffers. It shouldn't be anywhere near Washington D.C. That should be having to do with the people in your state. There's organizations for that shit. Don't let people in Alabama pay for what's going on in Alaska or any of the rest of this. But we don't know who inserted that into it. It would be self-serving for her to do it. Because they all want to do the same thing. They all want to do the old, I've never voted for anything with pork in it, but they want to be able to go back to their district and say, look at what I brought you. Because they all do the same exact bullshit. They put something in there that benefits them. Then they vote no because they know that the bill's got enough votes to pass without them voting for it.
Well, Frank, that you're answering like a couple of questions in your question. Why don't they attach a name to it so that no one person can be singled out for the pork barrel spending that they're doing? They made those changes back in 86 so that people can't be nailed for their pork barrel spending. It's the party or as a whole, or more importantly, it's the government. So you can't pick on them for doing something stupid. But on top of that, you went on to say, and you were talking about it, it's like when we look at this process, it is a ridiculous process that is meant to confuse and keep people distracted. As Dal is saying, this is about neo-nobles saying, oh, you peon, you peasant, you actually want to know what's going on in the government? Fantastic. Here's 4,000 pages. Figure it out. I know you don't have a law degree. You don't have a team of lawyers. You figure this out. Oh, you can't? Don't worry. Then take my word, do what I said, and just do it. And that's the problem that we have right now, is they are at a different level. And by the way, thank you, Dal. Neo-noble is my term for the government entities. He's using it now. I hope it catches on, because that's exactly how they're acting. And this is just one example of it. And notice in the bill, there is not one paragraph that I am aware of that addresses global food crisis, like how to resolve or address the global food crisis. We know it's happened. There's 30% less food in the world. I've been talking about this for 50 weeks. Every week. You guys know I do a weekly Sunday show. Mm-hmm. Every single show I have done since February, I have talked about the global food crisis that was coming, and now that it is here. I've been giving my suggestion on how to deal with it, but not one government agency, not one politician has addressed this, yet it is part of the reason why there is according to the government, a 10% increase in the cost of food. Except if you go to the store right now, you know that lettuce is 5 times as expensive. Eggs are 3 times as expensive. You can't find butter. You can't find a lot of foods because they're just not available. And you know you're paying somewhere closer to 35, in some parts of the nation, 45% more on your food bill today than the beginning of the year. Forget going back in time. Just in this year, you're paying 45% more than what you were paying in February. They don't want to talk about it. And no one's making them talk about it. Because I'm the bad guy. I actually remember this. I've actually been talking about this. Well, that means I have to be suppressed and you can't talk about this. And you're not an expert, so you can't possibly know this, even though I've looked at the data from around the world. It's very frustrating.
Well, when you're speaking of the food shortages, are you also going to be, speaking of? I've heard the show. I know what you cover. We go back. All right. But for those that may not have heard, are you also covering about all of the factories that mysteriously up in flames?
65, last count that I recall, 65 food processing plants out of 230 in the nation, which is pretty significant. I mean, it's roughly about a quarter of them. And that also has been adding to the food, not just the shortage, but the inflation.
Right. And then we also have to look into the agriculture department and how much money they spend paying farmers either not to grow certain things or to destroy the crops that they have grown.
No, it's worse than it's worse than you think. Here's something that a lot of people don't realize. Remember that we have ethanol in our gas now?
Yeah. That's one of my number one rules.
Okay, so ethanol removes the oxygen from water, which is why we're killing the Gulf of Mexico. This is a scientific fact. We've known this since 2005. So it's not new news. It's just not talked about. So ethanol is bad for the environment. It is less effective than gas by 25%. You put in more ethanol, you need to use more gas because it's not as efficient by 25%. The government has mandated the amount of ethanol that must be made in America, regardless of anything. That it destroys your engine, doesn't matter. Less effective, doesn't matter. Destroys the ocean, doesn't matter. So we have 30% less wheat and corn in the world. We are taking 1/3 of all the corn and we are dedicating that to ethanol. So we're cutting our food production. Well, we already are short. We don't have enough for the cattle. We don't have enough for people. And in that shortage, we are maintaining the exact same levels of ethanol production that we have made when we had a bounty of food. Does that make sense to anyone?
Well, not from a consumer point of view, not from a national security point of view.
And yet no one is talking about this in the news. It is a documented fact. The ethanol numbers have not been reduced. In fact, they are increasing, which means they are continuing to take food away, not just the empty farms or the food that they put in storage forever. They're literally taking the food we need that is short on the shelves anywhere and everywhere in the world, and we're literally using it to make a less efficient fuel source that is actually damaging the environment more the more that we use it.
Well, one of the any military strategist will tell you one of the number one rules is you never use your food as fuel.
Yes.
There are certain supply chains that you have to keep separated at all times and at all costs. You cannot intermingle those two things. When you sacrifice one for another, you're sacrificing both.
Well, Jan, have you heard about the fact that we're going to be taking the food and using it for ethanol instead of feeding people during this global food crisis? Has anyone mentioned it besides me just now to you guys?
Have I heard it? No, but I definitely believe it.
I heard it a while ago, but I didn't think it was going to get to the point that it is today.
Yeah. And those are probably the normal extremes that the average person, when they hear this, they're either saying, I had no idea, but I'm not surprised, or I didn't think it would be this bad. That's what the norm is saying. And the problem is that doesn't stop the government from doing what they're doing because they're neo nobles. They know better. They don't know better. They're not smarter than us. They don't have higher IQs. They're not better in business. They just happen to be elected because they had a really good ad. They made a good 30-second pitch.
And then
They-
they're told what to believe, they're told what to say, they're told what to vote for. They're, every single one of them, maybe with the exception of 5 or 6, are bought and paid for. They're all stooges.
Just ask
90, I would venture to say 95% of our elected representatives are stooges. They're all owned by somebody.
Oh,
they're
definitely.
useless.
Why does somebody spend $20 million running for an office that only pays $156,000? If there isn't some sort of a payoff at the end, why would a person or a company or a group maximize their donation capabilities to an individual if they didn't feel that the return on their investment would be worth the investment? What is the individual investment now? A donation, $2,300, something like that. Is that what it is? And then that's per individual, right? 2,300, so 4,600 per couple. And I think there's an allotment that if you have a family, that you can donate up to 5,600. I believe that might, if it's because they'll include you're donating on behalf of your kids and your family. Why would anybody donate $5,600 of their hard-earned money to an individual in any race if they didn't feel that they were going to reap at least that much more or more back at some point during that term with tenure? I don't see that as being an equitable trade. Unless you're going to get a return on the investment. I don't see why these big companies, we're going to give you $1 million towards your pack, $1 million towards it. They're all getting something in return, and all you got to do is look at the fallacious spending that on some of these things, and you see where all that money, how it all gets paid back. It's all a shell game. Every single bit of it is a shell game, and the only way they keep us out of the loop is, one, by making it so ridiculously complex that none of us can understand it, and by two, taking away our rights and our resources so that we can no longer question what they're doing. Then we can no longer find out what they're doing.
Well, this is endemic.
It's a slap at everything that we stand for.
Go ahead, Mike.
We're talking about the food shortages. Okay. How many of you guys know about the Conservation Reserve Program? CRP.
Are you talking about the FDA program about gardens?
No, this is a USDA program that's been going on since 1985, where farmers can sign up to set aside a part of their land and not produce on it.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm familiar in general with that. Yeah.
Okay. And the government will pay these farmers for not producing on those acres.
Right.
Do any of you have any idea how many acres have been set aside in the CRP?
Not recently, no.
In 2019, the number of acres was 24 million acres. This year, off of the USDA website, about the Conservation Reserve Program, it says nationwide in 2022, producers have enrolled 1.7 million acres through the general sign up, more than 2.4 million acres through grassland CRP sign up, and 875,000 acres have been submitted through the continuous CRP sign up. This means more than 5 million acres are entering CRP in 2023, surpassing the 3.9 million acres expiring this year. Okay, so what CRP is farmers sign up for this program and they agree for, I think it's 5 years, that they will not produce on the number of acres that they enroll in this program. Okay. We are in a global food shortage, a global one at that.
Mhm.
The United States is considered the breadbasket of the world. And here we are having more than 5 million more acres entering into CRP this year. So in 2019, the number of acres was 24 million. We have 2022 or however much. So we are close to probably 30 million acres that are no longer being produced on in the United States.
And what is what is the rationality given by the federal government for the existence of this program? Is it because they're trying to conserve topsoil?
I'll read it to you directly from the USDA website about the Conservation Reserve Program. CRP is a land conservation program administered by the Farm Service Agency, FSA. In exchange for a yearly rental payment, farmers enrolled in the program and agree to remove environmentally sensitive land from the agricultural production and plant species that will improve environmental health and quality. Contracts for land enrolled in CRP are from, I take that back. It was longer than 5 years, are from 10 to 15 years in length. The long-term goal of the program is to reestablish valuable land cover to help improve water quality, prevent soil erosion, and reduce loss of wildlife habitat. Signed into law by President Ronald Reagan in 1985, CRP is one of the largest private land conservation programs in the United States. Thanks to voluntary participation by farmers and landowners, CRP has achieved significant goals in conservation and sustainability.
Essentially, it's to prevent another Dust Bowl and for the eco freaks and saying, hey, we're conserving the land, natural land.
Well, I want to remind everybody what was happening back in 1985. Actually, 83 through 89, more specifically.
I can't tell you. I wasn't born yet.
The fall of Russia, the fall of the Soviet Union, I should say. It was beginning at that point.
No, what was happening specifically here in the United States?
Well, there was a lot of things happening here in the United States. Everything from the space race to everybody concerned about the what was happening with the end of the Cold War to the Wall Street situation that was going on.
The farm crisis.
Well, we had
Don't you
Farm
remember
Aid,
the Farm Aid concert and all
1987.
that stuff going on?
Oh yeah, that was Farm Aid when it started.
Okay, that's when all these farms were going belly up.
Uh-huh.
Okay, this was what actually set in motion the mechanism for corporate farms. Not unless you parachute pants happen. Yeah. So essentially, in the 80s, you had the farm crises happening. Okay, and tons of farms were going under. Family-owned farms were going under. And that's because commodity prices were stagnant. Okay, and they actually became stagnant under Carter and continued to be stagnant. And that led to the farm crisis. Well, lo and behold, Reagan, as one of his means of bringing the farm crisis to an end, set up the CRP under the guise of it being an environmental program
versus a payout to keep farmers in business.
But let's look at this. But also, this year was the fact that the people's gardens became a reality, which most people don't know about. The government right now, the FDA, USDA, the FDA, excuse me, the FDA has put out a program where you're supposed to register your garden, whether it's your backyard garden, backyard farming, whether you're in a city and you have a windowsill with a couple of herbs and maybe you're growing a tomato plant, whatever it may be, you're supposed to notify the government. And this is so that they can register all of those farms so that they can go into those farms, take the food that you've grown and distribute it, because you can't do that for yourself and it's not for your family, it's for everyone. The gardens, community gardens, are now government property. They're government farms. They fall under the regulations of the FDA under the People's Community Gardens. They call it the People's Garden. And this allows the government to have access to that food source. At the same time that we have 30 million acres that are not being used to produce anything, at the same time that we have a global food crisis with 30% less food, and they're taking roughly a third of that and using it for ethanol production.
Right.
Do you see the problem? This is 2022. The problem is huge and growing, and it has multiple stages, multiple platforms that it's happening on. And the net result is you're worse off today than you were in January because the government has taken control of more of your life. That's 2022. Does anyone think I got that part wrong?
My thing is, do you think any of these programs are actually thought of, designed, and engineered by people in Washington, D.C., or is it some entity outside of Washington, D.C. that concocts these plans and these arrangements and these different things and then puts it on somebody's desk?
The last thing that was actually done that was purely by a member of Congress was the new Green Deal, or excuse me, the Green New Deal by AOC, which was a joke. It
Well,
was
Most
stupid.
of
you know what? Look, at least let's give her credit for putting pen to paper and putting her thoughts on
she wrote
something
it.
and putting her name on it. You know, at least hey, she did the work. The work was wrong. The work was stupid. The work was laughed at, but she did the work. All right.
But that shows you the difference. That shows you the difference of what bills are like now and what happens when a human being, just 2 or 3 people, run with an idea and say, hey, here's my idea. The difference is here's something that's very corporate, that is so confused, so convoluted. It has so many different levels of kickback versus here's just regular people saying this, I have this goal. And I understand her goal. I understand her, whether I agree with it or not, which I don't agree with her, but I understand that's what she was elected for, to pass or to create those kind of stupid ideas. So I respect that she tried to do what she was elected for, but it shows you the difference of what real people doing what they really believe versus this corporate format that we see on a regular basis. One is very simple, easy to critique, but you get the point. Another one is so convoluted, there is no point. And the ones that always pass, and neither one of them should pass, quite honestly, which again is why we're doing our bill to reform elections in 2023, because it's, 5 pages, and it's straightforward, simple, and it should make sense. We'll see how that goes, but we'll get that out to them in 2023.
Just remember, Nothing
Does
more.
anybody have any idea on the total number of crop acres there are in the United States?
I would imagine there's somewhere around 150 million acres.
316.2 million.
Mhm.
Okay, that was as of March of 2021. Okay, so we have almost 30 million acres are set aside in CRP. So almost 10% of our farmland
Mhm.
is set aside and cannot be produced upon for 10 to 15 years.
Mhm.
Now, what's the enforcement mechanism on it if somebody decides to vacate that program?
They have to pay back all monies that they have received on it.
So it's not prorated.
No. No. If you put money in, if you put land aside in CRP, you get paid X number of dollars each year by the federal government for that, for those number of acres. If you take and decide to put that land back into production early, you have to pay back all the money that you had received off those acres.
Well, that doesn't seem like an equitable exchange of anything.
That's there's a reason why they did it that way, is because they seriously wanted farmers to quit producing. Okay, and that was supposed to help out with farm prices because it's supposed to help increase the price for the crops, for cash crops. At the same time, it's supposed to reduce the amount of crops that were actually being produced because at the time we were running out of place to store corn. Okay, and there was billions of bushels of corn and soybeans that were being left to rot out in the open because they had no place to store it.
Well, why didn't they turn it all into ethanol while they had the chance?
Ethanol was not big at that time. Ethanol was just getting started.
Ethanol is evil.
Oh,
it is.
You know, my truck runs like shit every time I put. You know, there's some gas stations pride themselves on using higher ethanol than others, and my truck runs like shit with that stuff in it.
Well, I can
It
think
doesn't
of
even smell like
535 places to put in your corn.
Okay, excuse this. You're going to hear echo in a second. Hang on.
Yeah, the other thing that's laughable is the diesel exhaust fluid.
Oh,
Yeah.
don't get me started on that bullshit.
Do you know what the number one ingredient in diesel exhaust fluid is?
It's synthetic cat piss.
It's urea.
Yeah, no.
Urine. It's urine.
It's
So if you ever
synthetic
pulled
piss,
over-
yeah.
Yeah, so if you're driving a diesel and you run out of DEF, open up the little lever, take a leak in your car, and you're right back on the road again. Maybe not, but it's the same idea.
I work for a dealership. Joking, please don't do that. No. So, in all honesty, two things that I talk to a lot of my customers about, and I probably shouldn't, to be honest, is the EGR or exhaust gas recirculation systems and the diesel exhaust fluid systems are one of the biggest, most crooked things that the EPA has done to the consumer in a long time.
Well, the EPA has done a lot of really bad things. I mean, look at our diesel standards that they have here versus the diesel standards they have in Europe.
Oh. Did you know that with diesels, not including the soot that's put out, a diesel actually runs cleaner than something like a Honda?
Well, this is what I'm talking about. They have the diesel standards that we have here in America versus the diesel standards that they have in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
In Europe, they go by contaminants per million per mile. How many contaminants
Yeah.
per million in your exhaust, like the carbon emissions? How much carbon is in your exhaust per parts per million over a mile that vehicle travels? And you'll get a number. Say it's 100. I don't know the numbers, but we're just going to speak in round numbers. I'll say, oh, it's 100. All right. Our standard is your vehicle has to produce less than 110. So it produces 100. Okay, your engine is approved. All right, you can go about your business. In the United States, they turn around and go, how many contaminants parts per million do you generate out of a gallon of fuel? And they'll tell you, well, our standard is 1,000. You can only have 1,000 produced out of a gallon out of that. Well, a gallon of diesel in a European diesel might produce 1,100 parts per million. Well, sorry, you can't use that engine here because it burns too dirty. You have to use our standard. So what they do is they produce a motor that'll produce under 1,000 parts per million per gallon used of diesel fuel. But here's the problem. The diesel motor in the United States that produces less than 1,000 parts per million travels 45 miles on 1 gallon of fuel. The diesel motor that they have in Europe, that they go by the amount allowed to emit per mile, goes 65 miles per gallon. Because even though you're producing more per gallon, the engine is more efficient and goes further in that 1 gallon by the European standard. So American standard is stifling diesel performance and stifling diesel efficiency. The diesel efficiency is substantially higher than a gasoline motor, but because they have the standards backwards on purpose, that's why in the European market, diesel is king. In the American market, gasoline is king. Because believe me, if they can, the gasoline companies know exactly what they're doing.
Oh yeah,
they know exactly what they're doing. And you tell me, Vass, Marshall, I don't know if Jan, maybe you guys, we're all in the same age group. Maybe you guys can remember when we were all kids. Don't you remember the diesel fuel was usually half the price of gasoline?
Yeah.
Most of the time.
You would see a sign that said, I remember the sign.
That's because
89 cents a gallon for regular unleaded. Diesel came in at 54 cents per gallon. Why is it reversed?
Well, a big part of that is two things. Well, one thing is the problem now. The reason it was so much cheaper is the way that you produce diesel was you basically scraped the crud off the top of the barrels that came in and refined and produced that, and that was your diesel fuel. And it was cheap because it was basically the stuff that they would have gotten rid of anyways, but they were able to refine it enough to use it. But now with this big heavy vehicles, bad for the environment, shame on diesels, shame on truck drivers. They've got to turn around and make it impossible to be a diesel owner.
Well, isn't another component of that why it's so expensive? Is we have less truck drivers today and we have less factories and manufacturing, as well as less drivers of trucks long haul. So that increases. So that's increasing the demand.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much fewer. There are so many fewer outlets that the demand is going up for each and every one of them, which drives up the cost. It's inflationary.
Government destroyed the profession of the over the road truck driver.
Mm-hmm.
With all the limited to a certain amount of miles a day, certain amount of hours per day, can't drive in tandems, can't drive in teams, can't do this, you can't do that. And we got to make the roads safer, got to do this, got to that. You made everything less efficient. You rose the price of the gas. These truck drivers are trying to make a living. I remember when I was a kid, truck drivers making buku dollars, making tons and tons of money. You know, these I had friends whose dads were out on the road 2-3 weeks at a time. They'd come back home for a week. They'd be gone. Man, new house, new car in the driveway. Kids had the best clothes, best toys, best food, everything under the sun. Now, truck drivers, man, they can't even make ends meet.
I was
And
actually dispatching earlier this year.
Well,
I was dispatching. Go ahead. Go ahead.
aside from that, though, why would anyone want to be a truck driver when they're getting shit on by the media, shit on by the people, get their freeways stopped, get pulled out of your truck, get your windows bashed in, and your whole load stolen by thugs who are stopping the freeways across the U.S., and no one's doing anything about it?
Man, somebody just
Why would you
mentioned
want to subject yourself to that?
Yeah, and the truck drivers that come across the border from the south, bringing South American goods across the United States, they're contracted to come from Mexico, Guatemala, wherever with their truckload of stuff. They can travel all the way up to Canada. They don't have to follow the same rules the American truck drivers do because their company isn't housed in America. Their driver is not an American, and they're not going by our rules. The only thing they do is they have the stamps with it and permits for what states and roads they're allowed to travel through, but they don't have to follow along by the same guidelines that American truck drivers do. Oh, you're on your 16th hour of driving today? Well, go ahead, keep going. Truck driver, American truck driver. Listen, 7 hours and 59 minutes. You got to pull that bad boy over and get a day's rest.
I actually was dispatching for trucking, long haul trucking this year. So 2022. I was doing it for a friend's company. They weren't able to survive, but I actually got to see what's going on with our actual trucking, picking up long haul, short haul, everything across the nation. And I can tell you, it's really amazing when you actually look at the numbers, the amount of money they were making versus the number of hours and miles they were driving is ridiculously low. People don't understand how little, you're talking about a $2,000 run could be roughly 1,200 miles, and the driver is going to net $200 out of that. Now think about that, and you can only drive 10 hours in a day. So you hit 10 hours, you have to stop. You are mandated by law. You have to stop, and if you don't, you get a fine that's going to absolutely evaporate all the money you're going to make on that run. So they have to stop.
And God forbid you don't have a T crossed, an I dotted, a comma or a punctuation mark in the right spot in your logbook. Or if your logbook is even somewhat illegible because maybe it was freezing that day when you were writing shit down on the back of the truck, and the state trooper can't read everything over at the weigh station. Oh, you're shit out of luck then too, buddy.
I have literally seen, and I have photos of it, a truck that was an empty gas can, an empty emergency gas can was in the back of the truck in a box. And because that was there, an entire shipment of food was labeled by the FDA as being spoiled. It's an empty gas can that was in a container in the back of a truck because there was no space for it. And because it existed, the entire shipment of prepackaged foods, they're packaged, they're wrapped, and then they're wrapped in the plastics for shipping, were considered spoiled and no longer good for human consumption. It made no sense. But that was...
And those mechanics eat stuff off the shop floor.
But this is the thing that doesn't make sense to me. So you're telling me, because I have, I don't know, you've got something in a bag, like in a plastic bag, right? It's completely sealed in. And that item of food, which is in that completely sealed in bag, or I'll give you another example. You got like a peanut butter, right? Okay. Can of peanut butter, completely sealed, which is inside a box, which is completely sealed, which is wrapped in containing wrapper. So you've got the container inside a container that is wrapped in a truck. And because an empty gas can exists in that space. The entire truck full of peanut butter is now considered contaminated and can no longer be shipped. This is the idiocy of the rules that
Yes,
are
sir.
out.
You are not mistaken.
Okay, and I have literally seen a shipment invalidated for human consumption for that scenario, and it boggles the mind. And we wonder, why is it more expensive now? And these are all inflationary things, and these are the examples. This is 2022, folks. This is what we're seeing across our nation on so many levels. We have ridiculous regulations that are so easy to violate if someone wants to violate them, that are negatively impacting you and driving up the cost. Whether it's the cost of fuel, it's cost of food, it's access to the food, distribution of that food, everything is getting worse. And we're being told repeatedly, Joe Biden, press secretary, most of the major news media, everything's fine. You just don't understand. It's amazing how much they keep telling us. This is why I call them neo-nobles. You peasants just don't understand. That's why we have to lead you. You're not smart enough to do this on your own. You're not smart enough to understand this. You just have to listen to us. This is what they were saying in the Middle Ages, justifying why nobles, by their royal bloodlines, were smarter and more imbued by God to lead others, because you just don't understand. Well, this isn't the Middle Ages. We have the Library of Alexandria in our hands. Every 70% of the nation have the Library of Alexandria at your fingertips. We understand. They just want power.
Well,
and that's 2022.
Not to justify them at all, but there's also never been any time in world history where more people have had more contact with and more access to more information than they do right now. And I believe that this is also probably the time when most people are the most ignorant of all of that information that's at their hands, because we have the power, we have the information, we have the access. But if you don't utilize it, you will let lesser people control you, because all the difference between them and you is the fact that they'll do the little bit of reading that most people today won't. Either they won't, they don't care to, they're afraid to. Maybe they think they won't understand it. Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. I don't know. But we are so rich with information and so poor with intellectual curiosity. Nobody will even look into whether or not something is true or not anime. They just take the word that the talking head gives them.
Because it's too easy, Frank. We are so spoiled. And in 2022, we are at the pinnacle of humanity in existence. There has never been a time when more people are fed, even with the global food crisis. There have never been more people that are well fed around the world. There's never been a time where less people were in poverty than exists right now. There has been no time where there have been more special interest groups, minorities, gay, LGBTQAI plus alphabet added on. You name your group, your special interest group, whatever it may be. No one has had more rights, more freedom, more recognition, more food, more housing than has existed than today. These are first world problems that were the dreams of generations, of millennia of generations. And we are living the dream. This is the sci-fi they were dreaming of in the 1900s. We are in the sci-fi future. And here, with that understood, we are wasting it all because you could have talked to anyone in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. People knew what was going on in their government, their politicians. They knew the policies they were passing. They knew what the bills were and what was being said about them and what they would actually do. And they understood the consequences of them. They knew it. Whether they agreed or not, totally different. They
knew what they were told.
No, they would know. I mean, look at the movements, whether it's ERA, whether it's the Black Panthers, even local government races with Mayor Koch.
But even still, government, was lying to the people back then.
Well, yeah,
lie to the people back now. So and access to that information, access to the truth, was much more limited then, because at least now you can still find shit out if you flip over enough rocks. Eventually, you'll kick one over that leads to the truth. But back then, you only had what they gave you. There was no Freedom of Information Act. Granted, we have a Freedom of Information Act now, even though the pages come out 90% redacted, we could still see a date and time on it. Back then, you couldn't even get that. You couldn't get anything. But I think at the time, our government also trusted the people a little bit more, or at least respected the people a little bit more, because people were more civic-minded. They were more involved with government at every level. They had more access to the availability of their congressional delegation. They could walk in and talk to people. They weren't so restricted as far as, look at the population 70 years ago. Population 70 years ago is half of what it is today, and we had the same amount of delegates, the same amount of representatives. So you had more of an opportunity to meet your representation, to get into Washington, to get to a local meeting and do something. You had, I think it was more close. It was more personable. Having the guy lie to you that, face to face was probably a little harder back then for them to get away with as it is for them to do now. But I just think
and that's
today. Go ahead, Michael.
That's one of the big things. Is right now we are grossly underrepresented. Back when 435 was set in Congress, that was in 1929. We have not changed the amount of representatives that we have in Congress since 1929, and our population has almost tripled since then. Okay, almost 100 years later, and we are still at the same number of representatives. It doesn't make sense why we are stagnated at that.
Well, just think about this, Michael. To get to your point, think about this. The same people who were reluctant to expand the number of representatives that we have are the same exact people that are so hell-bent on expanding the number of seats on the Supreme Court. They would rather have more people interpreting the shit that they pass than expanding the number of people that are there to represent the true interests of the people. Because it's easier for them to try and control a court than it would be to control more representatives.
And that's another thing that we need to kind of touch on, is everybody thinks that the Supreme Court has the last say on whether or not various laws are constitutional or whatnot. But I want to bring it back to who is actually ultimately responsible and is the final arbitrator of any law. And that is we, the people. And if we, the people, believe that a law is unjust or if a law is unconstitutional, we ultimately have the final say on that. However, if we're trying to act individually, guess what? We're going to get shut down by the big hand of government. But if we actually work together, organized as a nation, and start taking back our power away from the government that has been the power that's been stolen from us, then we can actually get our country back on track. But we have to come together as a nation. We have to quit allowing ourselves to be divided. And ultimately, that's what's going on. Okay. This omnibus bill that was passed, essentially with nobody reading it, with nobody looking at it, we as citizens of the United States should not stand for that. But yet we accept it. Okay. We shouldn't stand for our representatives not knowing what is being passed, what they are voting on. If our representatives don't even know what the hell they're casting a vote for, why the hell are they in office?
Power.
Okay.
Well, I
it's
think
time
some
for
of the
us,
I
the
think some of the
citizens of the
issues.
United States, to start saying enough is enough.
Go ahead, Jen.
I think some of the issue too is I know for a fact that, we're told to call our representatives. And then a bill like this comes up and you try to call your representative and the phones are off.
That's why I always say you send in an email or regular mail. One, it's trackable. Two, you have a timestamp. They can always say, I didn't know you called. We didn't have a record of that. Yeah, well, you got a record of my email. I have a copy of your recognition that I sent it to your email. I have the time and date that I sent it. I expect a response. Send out emails or regular mail because you can verify.
And all email programs allow you to, and all email programs allow you to request a receipt
Return receipt
that they actually got the email, and a
but you can
receipt
bypass that
shows
And
that
you
it
can
was actually opened up.
Yeah,
and you
but
can also carbon copy somebody else with it.
exactly. And now you have a record. Now, yes, you're right, Jeremy. They can get around that, but here's the thing: I at least have some establishing proof.
No, you're right. Yeah.
And now, if they want to say, well, yeah, but that wasn't, we didn't get that, or something else happened with it, that's a different argument afterwards, because now you have to recognize the question was asked. Whether they want to try and escape it somehow and try and sidetrack, at least they have to address it, because they can't deny we didn't know. They can't use that excuse. And that's where we need to step forward in 2023 if we want to see things improve. If you want to see us get out of the recession before 2025, if you want inflation to go back down from double digits to single digits, I'm not even saying to get it down to something reasonable, just to reduce it a little bit. If you want to be able to live a decent life, well, the keys that we have to start doing is we have to interact with our politicians and not just say, okay, I accept that. As an example, Republicans, conservatives, libertarians, where we go and say, oh, we lost. We'll just accept it. Oh, the bill passed. I guess no. That doesn't mean stop complaining or stop being upset. It means we need to continue to put pressure on them. Like with this funding bill of 1.7 trillion, like with the food crisis, like with the Americans in Afghanistan that are now 18 months, or just about 16 months still in Afghanistan. Since September 1st of 2021, we have 5,000 Americans that have been abandoned by the American government. And in 2022, we added another 10,000 Americans that we abandoned in Ukraine. So next in 2023, what, we're going to abandon people in South Korea or in Japan? Where's the next place that Americans are just going to abandon Americans and just leave them in the wind as there's a global crisis? Taiwan? I mean, where's it going to be? Because it's getting crazy. We've done it in the Middle East. We're doing it in Eastern Europe. I guess Southeast Asia is the next spot. I'd be very worried if you're living overseas or you have workers overseas that are Americans. Don't trust the American government to give you a plan to get you out, because under the Biden-Harris administration, they have point blank said they're not going to do it. This is what 2023 is looking at is, okay, where's the next spot in the world that America is going to abandon Americans in? Which is why our allies have no confidence. It's why Japan is building an actual army, and they're spending $320 billion in 5 years to build an actual army because they have no faith and confidence in the United States.
That they haven't had since World War II.
Right.
Yeah, it's part of the treaty of the 1960s U.S.-Japan treaty, which establishes and confirms that the United States will be the military and protector of Japan, is literally the oldest treaty that has not been changed since I believe it's since 1849. No other treaty in the world has lasted as long and didn't need to be changed because it was perfect. It worked. And it has failed because Japan no longer believes we will protect them. Who's next? Germany? England? I mean, who's next? This is a problem. This is global stability. 2023 looks to be a year of even worse global stability than what we have right now, which is abysmally worse than where we were 3 years ago.
Well, I keep saying it over and over again, and maybe one of these days people will start listening. And I hope to God people in the United States do start listening here soon. The only ones that can change it, if we look to government to change it, guess what? We're in trouble. The only ones that can change it is the American citizens. And I'm not talking about violent upthrow and all that stuff. There are many, many other mechanisms that we as American citizens can enact that will force this change in our government. But you can't do it as a lone wolf. We can't do it right now. Liberty First Foundation does not have enough backing to be able to put forth a lot of this stuff, even though we are. In fact, there aren't many organizations out there right now that do have the type of influence or backing that aren't so corrupt that they are actually causing the problem in the United States. We need to come together as citizens, and we need to say, okay, enough of this. We need to quit allowing ourselves to be divided. And I'm going again on a rant because ultimately the responsibility is ours. It's not our government's. It's not the people that we put into office, because once they're elected, it's up to us to hold them accountable. And we fail to do that every session of Congress. Okay.
Yeah.
And 2022 is a prime example of our failure as citizens. The excessive spending, the wasteful spending that has gone on in this year alone is mind-boggling. Okay. And we need to wake up. We need to wake up as a nation and say, hey, you are killing us. You are driving us into poverty. And
Waiting for-
and and, and honestly, we have all this talk about equity, and I've gone on this rant as well, in that there is no such thing as equity unless everybody has nothing.
Well,
And
equity
this
is
is
worse.
what our government is pushing us towards.
Well, equity is even worse than ethanol. Equity is even worse. It is the antithesis of equality. And in 2023, the message is, as we have been told by Joe Biden after the 2022 midterm elections, is we're going to do more of what we've been doing, which means diversity, which means equity, which means that FEMA will prioritize certain groups of people in national emergencies, as they did in Florida, as we heard from Kamala Harris, who said that's exactly what we should be doing, because that's exactly what the executive order from Joe Biden said we were going to do. So expect more of that. Expect that we're going to see more demonizing of people who ask questions. And we're going to see even more of the division in our nation as we are watching interest rates go up, and the returns. And a lot of people are just figuring, well, I'll be okay as soon as I get my tax return for 2022. I'll get my tax return, and that'll help me deal with all these problems. Except we already know, and the IRS has already said, tax returns are going to be down by some 20+% on average in 2023. When you get your check next year, you're going to get less money than you've been getting by about 20%, maybe even more for a lot of people.
Yeah, they haven't
So,
paid for those 87,000 agents that they just brought on board.
they're spending money. Where's that money going? $200 million to Pakistan. $200 million to Pakistan. We're paying for the government of Jordan to be able to run their government. Jordan is one of the richest nations in the world because they're an oil exporter, and we're paying more for OPEC oil than we were paying last year.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, this is so stupid, and people wonder. It's insane what they get away with.
And the thing is ultimately we all pay for it. We pay for it in our freedoms. We pay for it in our pocketbook, our financial freedom. We pay for it in our physical freedom. We pay for it across the board. We are paying for it. And the thing is that our government enacts more and more entitlement programs, and our mental health keeps deteriorating across the country. When are we going to start taking responsibility for ourselves? When are we going to start taking responsibility for our nation? Okay, because our government is doing a piss poor job of it. And I don't care what party is in power, they all are doing a lousy job. And it gets worse each session of Congress. And if you don't believe me, look what's happened under this administration. Even look what happened under the last administration. And you can go back and I mean, I've been alive for, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 presidents, I think. And there is not a one of them that's really improved this country. There's not a one of them that hasn't divided this country more than the last president. Okay. And the number of Congresses, there's been twice as many sessions of Congress in that time period. And for us to say that government is the one that's supposed to provide the solution is us not accepting responsibility for our nation. And this country was built upon a foundation of the citizens taking responsibility for their governance. And we are failing. This grand experiment of the United States is failing today because the citizens refuse to be involved.
True. Let me do this. I want to change it up for a second. We've been very serious and very down. I want to change it up a little bit because it's it's the end of the year. Let's hit a positive note. I know Frank, Mike, you just put out basically a top 10 list for this program for the year. I wanted to ask Jan. Jan, thinking about 2022, what was your favorite subject and what was maybe the favorite episode you may have seen? What's your point of view? Don't forget you're on mute. You're on mute.
You're muted, Jan.
There you go.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Are you talking your shows?
I'm saying, well,
Across the board, doesn't matter.
I mean, honestly, for me, I get something from any show that I watch, whether it be this show, whether it be Voss's show, whether it be some other shows. I learn every single time I watch something. So I don't pick favorites. I look at the fact that I'm growing. Knowledge is power.
true. That's very true.
So I don't know if I answered the question the way you wanted me to, but
No, there's no way. It's however you think it should be answered. It's up to you. Everyone has a different thing. I mean, according to Google, Wordle was the most searched term, the most important thing to Americans in 2022 was Wordle, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. I think Kanye was a bigger story than Wordle. I think the missiles, the 70 plus missiles that have been fired all year long by North Korea, which has created more tension in Southeast Asia because the United States has no foreign policy whatsoever. I think that was one of the top stories.
well, if you're going to go basis off of that kind of stuff, I think for me right now, the biggest thing that has come to revelation for me would be all the stuff going on that's coming out about social media and how, what it was another one of those quote unquote conspiracy theories that have been proven true. But yet to the depth that we're learning that it has been, it wasn't just the FBI that was involved. We're finding out that the Pentagon was involved, the CIA was involved. I mean, this is our government shutting down our First Amendment.
Oh, it was more than just our government. It was foreign agents, foreign spies.
Yeah,
were involved with that. as well.
You know, and then you've got to look at the elections again. You know, they're proving that there's election problems, and then what did the judge say in the Kerry Lake thing? Well, I'm gonna deny it because we've never overturned an election in this country. Well, that's not a reason to sweep things that you are finding out that are going wrong with our elections to say, well, I'm just gonna, you know, say that you lost because we're not gonna do it.
Yeah, that's a stupid
Actually,
reason.
there have been elections, not national elections have been overturned, but there's been some local and some state elections that have been overturned in our history. But here's my big thing on the whole election. If there is as much reservations about our elections as what there is, and people cannot say that there isn't because it's coming from both sides. If there is that much controversy over our elections, number one, why aren't we having a hell of a lot more audits on our elections to either prove that, yeah, there is a problem or no, there isn't?
Well, when you have an election result come up a week before the election and it's the result that you get on the election, there's something wrong with that. When you're sitting there watching the election returns and then all of a sudden this candidate's numbers drop by thousands of votes and this candidate's goes up by thousands of votes, there's something wrong. But it's all in our heads.
But let's make sure, because we want the censors to understand, we're not saying that anyone, that there was anything untoward with any election. We're just merely pointing out some aberrations in elections as documented by the major mainstream media. So we're fortifying future elections, just like Time Magazine, because censorship is real. It's ridiculous that we have to say that on a political, on a commentary and political commentary in particular. It's ridiculous that we have to say that in America. Otherwise,
it is. It is absolutely ridiculous. And one of these days, I honestly hope that we can end up with a platform, which the internet was intended to be, where everyone has an equal voice, where everyone is able to speak freely. Okay. And I don't care if it's misinformation or if it's truthful information, because ultimately it's down to the individual to figure out what's misinformation and what's not. For government to determine what's misinformation and what's not is akin to determining propaganda. Okay, we as individuals need to determine what is actual truth. Okay, and I'm not talking what is your truth. I am talking about what is actual truth. And there is a difference. Okay, because what people are claiming is, well, my truth is this, is not truth.
Well, it's ridiculous when we hear them say, it's my truth. You don't understand the truth. It's relative truth. No, truth is never relative. Science is relative. Science can be wrong. Knowledge can be wrong. Lots of things in life can be wrong. Truth is an absolute. It is either true or it is not true. That's it. You know,
exactly.
The sun rises in the east, it sets in the west. That is true. It is a fact. It is immutable. Truth is.
When they came out and told us not to question the science, isn't that what science is about? To question?
That's the whole point of science. That is the purpose.
Exactly. And then to find out that, well, they only want this narrative to be told, so they're going to censor every other narrative on it. Wait a minute, that's my First Amendment right.
Well, think about
Well,
that's
well,
why they
here's the
said
thing.
it. Oh, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
Okay. This year, and actually past couple years, has been all about misinformation. And when you're only allowing one side of an issue or one side of anything to be told, that is the heart of misinformation.
Well, that's the
Whenever
whole thing.
censoring is done or conducted, that is the root cause of misinformation.
Well, and when you tell doctors they have to follow this and that and this, otherwise they're going to lose their license. Doctors are no longer doctors; they're employees. I mean, California just came out again, and they passed. Their government passed. If you're a doctor and you disagree with a representative and what they are stating, you can lose your license.
Well, this goes back to another aspect of what you're saying there, Jan. Another example I think that the average person will notice. Stepping away from the law, which a lot of people, they just don't follow that. Okay, let's talk about entertainers, which is why I want to bring up Kanye again. It's because the argument about misinformation is obvious when we look at the Kanye controversy. If we were following the misinformation and disinformation governance of social media, Kanye, they wanted to silence him. They wanted no one to hear what he had to say. How would that be better if we had followed their rules, if we had followed their guidance and said, you don't have a First Amendment right to speak, you don't have the right to hear what he says because they may object to it. And instead of what we did get, no one would have heard him. And so today, people wouldn't know that he enjoys, and his words were far stronger, fascism, that he is a fascist, that he likes that ideology, and that's what Kanye supports by his words in several, not just one, but several interviews and news sources. We are now better informed and we can make a better decision. And the arguments against 1930s Germany fascism were able to come out, and people were able to make people more sensitive to the plight of Jews, to what happened around the world, to identify and understand the causes of World War II. It was a wonderful, teachable moment in history that benefited everyone, even tangentially, and improved and gave us the reason why we need the First Amendment, so that we can hear the voices we don't like, and then we can come out and say, and this is why I don't like it. This is why I think you're wrong. Not to silence him, but to point out the flaws so that we can improve things. See, and that's the thing that all these people on social media, on Twitter, all these people in the various social media companies, the Disinformation Governance Board, basically the Ministry of Truth of the Biden-Harris administration, they miss this, or they want people to not understand. The benefit is the more we can point that out, the better everyone is. The less that we let people hear these things, the more you can lie about what's being said, and the more dangerous it becomes. I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It makes sense. I mean, I get angry too because, I mean, your site says it all. No sound bites allowed. You know, I'm so tired, and this is something for me that's been going on for years and years. It's just gotten worse over the last 6 years. Is, you know, somebody, a politician, or somebody will come out, a doctor, you know, one of us will come out and say something, and they take this much of the section of what you've said, and they turn it into this big negative narrative. And it's
Yeah.
like, that's not what was said.
Well, we
You
went from a
know?
media that used to quote people to a media that specializes in paraphrasing, where you can take somebody's, entire sentence, extrapolate just a couple of words, put dot, dot, dot in between the words, and make a brand new sentence out of it, and then present that as the actual quote, even though you
And
paraphrase
taking
what the
stuff out,
person said.
taking stuff out of context.
Oh, I've
They're
had
they're
that.
infamous for taking things out of context.
Well, and they're
again,
doing
there's
it. They're
both
doing
sides
it.
that are
They're
guilty of
doing
that.
it more and more now, and they're getting worse and worse with how they're trying to make that context sound. And it's just, and then they tell you when you come back and say that's not what they said. That's not what well, you don't know. You know, and then the personal attacks start again.
No, Jen.
Well,
Jen,
we
I just want to point out, as someone who's been quoted and been on many news programs, I'm talking about major mainstream news, like with Syracuse.com, which is a major local newspaper. I have literally had reporters, and I always record my interactions with reporters, with the major news media. And I literally had reporters who reworded exact quotes of mine. And then they put it out. They put out this piece, massive national news, and they misquoted me. And I'm like, well, that's not what I said. He said, well, that's the essence of what you said. I said, but that's not what I said. And it's not the essence of what I said, because what I said has an entirely different context. He said, well, how would you know? I said, because I have a recording of everything that we said, because I record everything for this reason. And so, and his answer was, yeah, but you're small and I'm big. So they didn't change it. So I actually had to go out and put it out in the national news. Go ahead.
Well, no, it's the other part of it though is like you said, they don't put all of what you said in there. They cut little snippets out, like we talked about a couple weeks ago with the gal, gal wasn't even being a threat, wasn't even causing problems. But you only see the 10 seconds of video. You miss the first 10 seconds of it because they make it seem like it doesn't exist.
Yeah, with January. So you're talking about January 6th when Ashley Babbitt was shot. Everyone picks up from the 5 seconds where you see her face. There's the Capitol Police are around the corner. You don't get to see them yet. You see her, you see the gun come out, and she gets shot. And then you see the Capitol Police come up the stairs. That's the video clip everyone in the nation knows. The 15 seconds before that are the Capitol Police being in the room with full body armor, full riot gear, in the room, controlling it, walking down the stairs and around the corner. Then the gun comes out and shoots Ashley Babbitt, and then they come upstairs. There's a big difference in the context of those two things. One is Capitol Police had control, and they gave it up so someone could get shot, versus, oh, they only arrived on the scene after someone got shot. Big difference. And that's yet again another example of the manipulation. The January 6th committee, they didn't show the full video. They didn't show the 2 minutes. And I know the video clip that they got it from. I saw it when it came out. It's actually a 15-minute video clip. The entire video is 15 minutes, with 7 minutes before that incident, before the Capitol Police even showed up. And then it continues for another, I believe it's 7 minutes after the shooting. showing that entire thing, and they only took out that 15 seconds out of the original video that was published. It was a live stream, and it actually was about 15, 20 minutes long, and they're showing literally about 15 seconds of it. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
And Dolph says we need less sound bites and more discussion, but you can't discuss with reactionary ignoramus willingly ignorant because of their upbringing. That's very true. But one of the biggest problems that we have is our lack of attention, our attention spans. Okay. And this is very evident in the fact of the rise of TikTok, of Instagram, of these micro videos. Started with Vine. Nobody wants to be engaged any more than 2 to 3 minutes. Okay. You look at videos that are out there, and you can look at analytics on YouTube and other places. Your most common videos that are watched all the way through are less than 5 minutes. That's because nobody has an attention span anymore of a few seconds. Okay, we've all got, look, there's a squirrel. Okay, or ooh, shiny. We're distracted at the drop of a hat.
But it's gotten to that point because that's the
literally
way they
what
wanted
everything
it
is
to be.
anymore.
Well, they're programming you with things like TikTok and YouTube
Exactly.
Shorts and Facebook Shorts to have a 1 minute attention span.
Mhm. Okay, and Twitter, actually, Elon Musk did say that he's going to expand Twitter, the number of characters allowed in Twitter. But Twitter is one of the worst. Okay, when they limit you to 140 characters, how can you get a thought out in 140 characters? Honestly, how can you have an engagement? And everybody will if you do a thread, people will read your first thing and won't go beyond that.
And now Musk is announcing that he wants to transform Twitter into more of a video-based platform that would compete with Instagram and TikTok and all the rest of these things. So now, instead of Twitter being the haven of political discussion that it's been, even though most of our discussions have been censored over the years, now it's going to become more of one of these, oh, here's a new trend everybody's got to do. Everybody do this little dance. Everybody do this little song. Everybody do this. Here's something from pop culture. Everybody replicate that. It's going to be yet another, as mind numb as Twitter is now, it's now going to become the third zombie platform for people who don't use any sort of critical thinking.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And if you look at what's trending on TikTok, on YouTube even, or Instagram and stuff, it's stupid stuff. Okay. It's the latest little happy dance. Okay. I mean, people don't want to be engaged anymore. People don't care. And we've been conditioned to not care anymore. We've been conditioned not to hold our government accountable. We've been conditioned to, well, they're in the government, so they've got to know. No.
Well,
that's not what our country was founded on. That's not what we were built upon.
Well, all you got to do is look at the number one recipient of the ignorance that is abound, and that's government. They are the benefactor of ignorance. They thrive on it, so they have absolutely no reason in the world to try and promote it. That's why they're even going so far as to, you know, the education department now only wants to start teaching American history from 1861 and forward. Nothing before. They want to cram all the rest of those years of American history, world history, into one semester in the formative years that you're going to probably forget about, and then just concentrate on how evil, everything is after that. They're not going to teach anything more about American greatness, about all the things that we've accomplished, anything like that. They're just going to want to, preach that woke crap to everybody, because that's what that stirs the emotion, and that's what they want the people to vote on. That's what they want the people to react on. What is going to emotionally drive the people to get the visceral reaction that we can, based on the information we feed them and not the information that actually took place.
Well, they're completely rewriting our history and taking our history away. I mean, they just passed the thing to take Dred Scott's bust out of the Rotunda. I mean, isn't he supposed, wasn't he like way up there with the fight for slavery and, and you're going to remove his bust and wipe him out of history now?
Him, Abraham Lincoln, the 51st, which is out of the Civil War.
Well, I wish I had written them down, but I found 4 different articles in what you would consider prestigious news sources that all identified Abraham Lincoln as a Democrat.
What?
Yeah, I did 4 different news articles that I read from different sources. I forgot which one they were. I wasn't savvy enough to write them down or bookmark it, but they had all identified Abraham Lincoln as a Democrat. He was the leader of the Democrat Party.
We used to teach history in this country. Okay, and our educational system has gotten to the point where it is, quote unquote, evolving. And we went from teaching history and civics to teaching social studies. And soon that will go away.
Well, that'll become social engineering.
Yeah. And yeah. We're our own worst enemies because of our lack of engagement and this other stuff. We are bringing this on ourselves. Okay. Jeremy's put up our membership drive for 2023. And I do want to actually start tapering this off. We've been going almost 2 hours, not quite, but we're getting close to it. So we're going to go ahead and do a plug for the Liberty First Foundation here. Right now, we have our 2023 membership drive going on. And essentially what we're asking you is to become a member of the Liberty First Foundation. For $15 a year, you will get access to exclusive content, educational resources, be invited into members-only webinars and events like what we're holding tonight for $15 an hour. Now, I want to let you know that the people that you see on screen here, and obviously you don't see me on screen because I'm just not on camera tonight, but you hear my voice. The people you see on screen put their own money into this. And we only have a finite amount of resources that we can dedicate to this cause, simply because we don't have resources. And we put forth as much as we can. We have been doing so for a number of years. Now it's time where we need your help. We need our audience's help in order for us to keep spreading the message of liberty, to keep spreading the message of freedom, to keep pushing to restore the Constitution of the United States. We can only do so much. We only have so much time. We only have so much financial resources to be able to spread this message. And that's where our audience, the people that support us, can help. Okay. With your $15 membership, you can help us be able to reach more people. You can help us be able to do more in spreading the message of liberty. Okay. Something else that you can do for us is to like, share, and comment and subscribe to our live streams, to our pages on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. All these sources you can subscribe, and you can help us spread the message. But we can't do it just ourselves. Okay. For the most part, I mean, you see 5 of us on screen. That's it. That's all of us. Okay. There's only so many people that the 5 of us are going to be able to engage with, be able to get to. But we do have people that follow us. We do have people that are followers of the Liberty First Foundation. If all of us work to spread this message, if all of us come together, we can actually build a platform where we can actually institute change. But alone, 5 of us is not enough. And we're not going to get very far. But with your help, both financially, and if you can't help financially, help us with spreading our content. Then we can reach a lot more people. We can engage with people that we don't know necessarily, but that you may know. Now, it doesn't take much to hit the like. It doesn't take much to share. I mean, it's a click. That's all it takes. Maybe 2 clicks. We can only share it so far. But with your help, we can share it even further. And with your help of, like I said, $15 a year, that's less than that's a little over $1 a month. Okay, it's pennies per day. You can help us get to the next level. And the more members we have, the larger our voice becomes when we go to speak to these politicians, when we go to speak to the people that drive policies. And with your help, with your backing and your support, we can actually be the ones that drive policy. We can be the ones that have the voice to start changing our nation and start becoming a more constitutional nation instead of a nation that's out of control with its spending, out of control with its oppression, you name it. Right now, we have a government that is out of control. And it is only the people that are going to be able to change that. And if you help support the Liberty First Foundation, we can become your voice. So I'm going to step off the soapbox now, step off the ad box, and go back in. And I want to thank everybody for supporting us over the last year. We've been doing this not quite a year now, doing live streams. We've been running our website since 2018, and we've been getting some support there. But again, we need your help. We need you to help spread our message. And that is a message of getting government back under control. Okay. Now, I'm not talking making it more conservative. I'm not talking about making it less liberal or any of that stuff. I'm talking about making our government more constitutional, which is what it is supposed to be. That is what that document is for. The document is the guidelines for how our government is supposed to operate. However, if we, the people, don't do our part to hold our elected representatives accountable to that, then we fail. And we as a nation will fail. Okay. I want to go ahead and open it up to everybody. If they have any more comments, anything else that they want to say tonight. Not shutting down the stream. I just did want to get out that message about we need your help. Okay. And we need your help in the comments. Okay. We need your help to come in there, engage with us. Okay. Hold us accountable for what we're saying. If we're saying something that's wrong, then let us know. Okay. We challenge you to challenge us on our positions. We challenge you to challenge us on our facts. Okay. Or what we're presenting as facts, because we don't always get it right. And when we get it right, when we get it wrong, we will admit when we're wrong. But it's up to you to bring that to our attention. Okay. So does anybody else have anything else they want to say tonight?
Well, I'm just going to jump in real quick before I have to go. I'd just say, listen, it's been a hell of a year. We didn't recap everything that we'd like to have recapped, such as the Bruin decision, everything going on with New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, California. Do want to give a shout out to our friends in Hawaii, who, after a long and historied story of denying the people their rights, as of 2 days ago, signed their very first concealed carry permit. And we hope to see thousands and thousands more to come from that. So with that, myself, I'm going to bid everybody a fond and fair adieu and wish you all a very happy, healthy, and prosperous new year. And hope that when 2023 rolls around, we can engage more people and set more people free from tyranny by allowing them to open up their minds and see what the world around them really looks like. So with that, I will say goodnight to my compatriots. I love you guys, one and all. And be safe, be happy. I got to go take my my medication because my eyesight is blurry. So until we see each other again, be safe, shoot straight. Love you guys.
Love you too.
Thanks,
Frank.
Well, I just want to say that I think that we have a real fight ahead of us, seeing what's gone on, especially the last 2 years, this year even more so. I really hope that people start to share our stream and our word, and Frank's or Mike says it all the time that we got to come together as a people. And we see that, we see one side does a real good job of that. And if we can do that as a country, I think we'd start seeing some things get done. Other than that, I hope everybody a happy new year, and just stay safe.
Jeremy?
You got any parting thoughts, Michael?
Well, for me, it's really easy. Be aware. That is one of the key things. Be aware of your government, being aware of your community, be aware of your friends, whether it's looking out for them because I know it's a difficult time during this holiday season, whether it's about depression or alcohol, drug abuse, domestic abuse, suicide. Always be in touch, reach out to people, talk with them, and talk with them about politics too. Because, you may say, well, entertainment, yeah. But you know what? Whether Brittany Griner plays another game for the WNBA or not will not change your life. But I guarantee you, those 4,000 pages in the new budget, yeah, that is changing your life. It's called inflation.
Mhm.
Have the conversation, have the uncomfortable conversation saying, I don't agree. Whether it's with us or with the government, doesn't matter. Have that conversation because you'd be surprised how many people feel exactly like you do. And they're just being told to shut up.
Mhm.
You know what? We respect you more than the government looks at you like a 5-year-old. We look at you like adults, our equals and our peers. There is no equity about that. We want to hear your voice, be heard, and bring that into 2023. Be heard as the adult that you are, as the human being that you are. Whether we agree or not, that's secondary. First thing is be heard and hear others.
Mhm. All I've got is, firstly, take care of your health. You've only got, one chance. And if you can't take care of yourself and you can't get out and do this stuff, you have to make sure that you're one of I guess, able and sound body and mind to be able to get out and talk to people about things and making sure that you're talking to people. And I encourage people, like Vass was saying, talk to your friends about this, talk to your family about this. You may learn that there are people who are interested, and you may find a lot more people who are not interested in what you have to say, but it helps you. It really helps you tighten up your circle and helps you get to talk to the right people and maybe not waste so much energy on people who don't care. And those people who don't care, they're going to let you know, and you can spend more time finding people who do care. And
Yeah,
Now, I appreciate everybody's final thoughts.
we appreciate
Okay.
you.
absolutely.
And my final thought for this year is get out into your communities. Find ways to help in your communities. Okay. One of the big things about working in your communities and helping in your communities is the fact that you do engage with people. You do find out how others feel about what's going on, how others are responding to what's going on. So be engaged. And also by being engaged in communities, you can actually be the driver of change in your communities so that you build your communities better, make your communities better. Um, because if we start improving in our communities, then we improve our nation as a whole. But again, it's a small step, but that small step can lead to very big changes. I want to wish everybody a very happy new year, a very prosperous new year. And I want to just leave with final thought of get involved. Plain and simple, get involved. Because if you fail to get involved, somebody else is going to do it for you. So we are here every Friday night at 9 p.m. This is the last show for 2022. We will be back again in the new year of 2023. Hopefully, we will have, well, I know we're going to have new things to talk about. We're going to have new discussions. I want our audience to grow. I want our reach to grow. That is my goal for the next year is to grow the people that are engaged and to grow a country that is back in the hands of the people and not in the hands of the elite. Thank you, everybody. This has been a great show. And with that, I'm going to say good night. We will see you next week, 9 o'clock Eastern Time on Fridays.
Good night,
Good night,
guys.
everybody. We'll see you on the 6th.